Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So in this video, I am going to discuss about oxygen transport, especially how hemoglobin transports oxygen in the blood. In animals, nearly all the oxygen carried by whole blood is bound and transported by hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is present in erythrocytes, which is also known as red blood cells or RBCs. Normal erythrocytes are small and biconcave disc of diameter 6 to 9 micrometer. Erythrocytes are formed from precursor stem cells which is known as hemocytoblast. And during the maturation process, the stem cells produces daughter cells that form large amount of hemoglobin and lose their intracellular organelles such as nucleus, mitochondria and endoplasmic reticulum. As the mature erythrocytes lose their intracellular organelles, therefore it is known as incomplete vestigial cells which is unable to reproduce. And in humans, erythrocytes are destined to survive for only 120 days. Thus, in humans, the lifetime of erythrocytes are 120 days. As the mature erythrocytes forms large amount of hemoglobin, therefore the main function of erythrocytes is to carry hemoglobin. And in erythrocytes, hemoglobin is dissolved in cytosol at a very high concentration, which is about approximately 34% by weight. Arterial blood passes from lungs to peripheral tissue via heart, whereas venous blood returns to the heart from peripheral tissue. And in arterial blood, the hemoglobin is 96% saturated with oxygen, whereas in venous blood, hemoglobin is 64% saturated with oxygen. Therefore, each 100 ml of blood passes through the tissue releases about 1/3 of the oxygen that hemoglobin carries, which is about 6.5 ml of oxygen gas at atmospheric pressure and body temperature. Now coming to the structure of hemoglobin. The structure of hemoglobin subunits are very similar to that of myoglobin. Hemoglobin is abbreviated as HB and has molecular weight of 64,500. Hemoglobin is roughly spherical and has diameter of nearly 5.5 nanometer. Hemoglobin molecule is a tetrameric protein, means it is made up of 4 polypeptide chains, and each hemoglobin molecule contains 4 heme prosthetic group, and each heme prosthetic group is associated with each polypeptide chain. Adult hemoglobin contains 4 polypeptide chains which is of 2 types of globin, that is 2 alpha chain and 2 beta chain. Each alpha chain is made up of 141 amino acid residue, whereas each beta chain is made up of 146 amino acid residue. Here the figure represents the structure of hemoglobin molecule which contains 4 polypeptide chains, that is 2 alpha polypeptide chain and 2 beta polypeptide chain, as you can see here. And it contains 4 heme prosthetic group which is represented in red color, as you can see here, and each heme prosthetic group is associated with each polypeptide chain. Although fewer than half of the amino acid residue are identical in the polypeptide sequence of the alpha and beta subunits, the three-dimensional structure of 2 types of subunits are very similar. If you see the amino acid sequences of myoglobin polypeptide chain, hemoglobin alpha polypeptide chain and hemoglobin beta polypeptide chain, there are only 27 positions where the amino acid sequences are identical. As you can see here, the amino acid sequences that shaded in pink and grey represents the identical amino acid sequences among 3 polypeptide chains, that is myoglobin, hemoglobin alpha polypeptide chain and hemoglobin beta polypeptide chains. Here the amino acid residues shaded in pink are conserved in all known globins, whereas the residues shaded in grey are conserved among myoglobin polypeptide chain, hemoglobin alpha polypeptide chain and hemoglobin beta polypeptide chain. Despite the similarity of amino acid sequences among myoglobin polypeptide chain, hemoglobin alpha polypeptide chain, hemoglobin beta polypeptide chains are only at 27 positions. The structure of hemoglobin subunits are very similar to that of myoglobin. As you can see here, this figure represents the structure of beta subunit of hemoglobin, whereas this figure represents the structure of myoglobin. As you can see here, there is lot of similarity in the structure between the beta subunit of hemoglobin and myoglobin. The nomenclature of the helix of hemoglobin polypeptides are similar to that of myoglobin polypeptides. But the difference is the alpha subunit of hemoglobin lacks the short D helix, this one, which is present in myoglobin. And this short D helix is present in the beta subunit of hemoglobin. And interestingly, the E and F helices of each of the subunit of hemoglobin forms the heme binding pocket. Means the heme binding pocket is made up largely of the E and F helices in each of the subunit of hemoglobin. The quaternary structure of hemoglobin suggests that there is strong interactions between unlike subunits, that is between alpha and beta subunits of hemoglobin, not between alpha and beta subunits of hemoglobin. The alpha 1 beta 1 interfaces and alpha 2 beta 2 interfaces involves more than 30 residues, and its interaction is sufficiently strong that although mild treatment of hemoglobin with urea tends to disassemble the hemoglobin tetramer into alpha beta dimers of hemoglobin, and these alpha beta dimers remain intact, whereas alpha 1 beta 2 interface or alpha 2 beta 1 interface involves 19 residues. And at the interfaces of hemoglobin subunits, there are three types of interactions, and that is hydrophobic interactions, hydrogen bonds, and ion pairs, which is also known as salt bridges. And out of these three interactions, it is hydrophobic interactions that predominates at all the interfaces. Means hydrophobic interactions play an important role for the interactions at the interfaces of hemoglobin subunits. Now coming to what kind of structural changes in hemoglobin takes place when oxygen binds to hemoglobin. The X-ray analysis of hemoglobin revealed that there are two major conformations of hemoglobin, that is R state and T state. R state denotes relaxed, whereas T state denotes tense. Although oxygen binds to hemoglobin in either state, but it is the R state which has significantly higher affinity for oxygen, and oxygen binding to hemoglobin stabilizes the R state, whereas the T state is stabilized by greater number of ion pairs which may lie at the alpha 1 beta 2 interface and alpha 2 beta 1 interface. So when oxygen is absent experimentally, the T state is more stable. Therefore, it is the T state which is predominant conformation of deoxyhemoglobin. And the binding of oxygen to a hemoglobin subunit in the T state triggers a change in the conformation to the R state. Means binding of oxygen to T state triggers a transition from T state to R state, which is shown in the cartoon representation. So here the figure represents the different subunits of hemoglobin, that is alpha 1, beta 1, alpha 2 and beta 2. Here the beta subunits are shaded in blue, whereas alpha subunits are shaded in grey. And the positively charged side chains and chain termini involved in ion pairs are shown in blue, as you can see here, whereas the negatively charged partners are shown in red, as you can see here. So when the entire protein undergoes transition from T state to R state, the structures of the individual subunits changes little, but the alpha beta subunits pairs slide past each other and rotate. That resulted in the narrowing of the pocket between the beta subunits. As you can see here, this is the pocket in the R state and this is the pocket in the T state. And the pocket in the R state is narrowed down as compared to the T state. And in this process, some of the ion pairs that stabilize the T state are broken and some new ones are formed. And the most important is his HC3 residue at the C termini of beta subunits. And his HC3 residue at the C termini of the beta subunits are involved in the ion pairs in the T state. But when the entire protein undergoes transition from T to R state, his HC3 residue rotate in the R state towards the center of the molecule, and in the center of the molecule, his HC3 is not involved in ion pairs. Max Perutz proposed that T to R transition is triggered by changes in the position of key amino acid side chains that surrounds the heme. Heme is a complex organic ring structure which is called protoporphyrin. In protoporphyrin, a single iron atom is bound in ferrous state. So in the T state, the porphyrin ring is slightly puckered. That causes the heme iron, which is represented by ball, to protrude somewhat on the proximal his side. And here the proximal his side is his F8. And the binding of O2 to heme iron causes the heme to assume a more planar conformation. And the planar conformation of heme shifted the position of proximal his and attached F helix. So in this figure you can compare the position of proximal his and attached F helix in the R state from T state. So these changes lead to adjustments in the ion pairs at the alpha 1 beta 2 interface. So in conclusion, the binding of O2 to a hemoglobin subunit in the T state triggers a change in the conformation to the R state. So when the entire protein undergoes transition from T to R state, three important events takes place. First one is the shifting the subunits pair substantially that affects certain ion pairs, and most important is his HC3 at the C termini of the beta subunits, which is involved in ion pairs in the T state. And the transition from T state to R state rotate his HC3 residue towards the center of the molecule where they are no longer in ion pairs. Second one is there is narrowing of the pocket between the beta subunits. And third one is the binding of oxygen to heme iron changes the conformation of porphyrin from slightly puckered to more planar conformation. So till here we have discussed there are two major conformations of hemoglobin, that is the R state and the T state. And it is the R state in which the oxygen has a significantly higher affinity for hemoglobin, whereas the predominant conformation of deoxyhemoglobin is the T state. And the binding of O2 to a hemoglobin subunit in the T state triggers a change in the conformation to the R state. And now coming to how hemoglobin binds oxygen. As there are two proteins that has ability to bind oxygen, so any protein that binds oxygen efficiently in the lungs and release oxygen efficiently in the tissues are appropriate for transport of oxygen to body's organ and tissues. Suppose a protein that bonds oxygen with high affinity would bind it efficiently in the lungs, but it would not release much oxygen in the tissues. And another protein that bonds oxygen with a sufficiently low affinity to release it in the tissues, and this protein would not pick up much oxygen in the lungs. So hemoglobin solves these two problems by undergoing a transition from low affinity state to high affinity state, that is from T state to R state. So as a result of transition from low affinity state to high affinity state, hemoglobin has a hybrid S-shaped or sigmoid binding curve for oxygen. So any protein that has sigmoid binding curve for oxygen is appropriate for efficient binding and release of oxygen, whereas myoglobin binds oxygen with a hyperbolic curve rather than sigmoid binding curve, and any protein that have hyperbolic curve for oxygen binding is ill suited for efficient binding and release of oxygen. So now the question is why myoglobin produces hyperbolic curve rather than sigmoid binding curve? Because myoglobin is a single subunit protein with a single binding site for for oxygen. So any single subunit protein with a single binding site cannot produce sigmoid curve, because in single subunit protein, each molecule of ligand binds independently and cannot affect ligand binding to other molecule. Whereas in case of hemoglobin, which is a multi-subunit protein, and each subunit has oxygen binding site. So oxygen binding to individual subunits of hemoglobin alter the affinity for oxygen in the adjacent subunits. And the first molecule of oxygen that interacts with deoxyhemoglobin binds weakly, because the first molecule of oxygen binds to a subunit of hemoglobin in the T state. So the binding of first molecule of oxygen leads to a conformational changes, and that conformational changes are communicated to adjacent subunits. That makes easier to bind additional molecule of oxygen. So in conclusion, the T to R transition occurs more readily in the second subunit once oxygen is bind to the first subunit, and the last or fourth oxygen molecule binds to a heme in a subunit that is already in the R state. Therefore, the binding of last or fourth molecule of oxygen to hemoglobin is with much higher affinity than the first molecule. This kind of binding is cooperative binding, and the cooperative binding of a ligand to a multimeric protein or multi-subunit protein is a form of allosteric binding, and the allosteric effects gives rise to cooperativity, and the cooperativity are mediated by conformational changes that are transmitted from one subunit to another by subunit-subunit interactions, and a sigmoid binding curve is diagnostic for cooperative binding, as the sigmoid binding curve permits a much more sensitive response to a ligand concentration, and it is important to the function of many multi-subunit proteins. As the cooperative conformational changes are transmitted from one subunit to another by subunit-subunit interactions. So the cooperative conformational changes depend on variations in the structural stability of different parts of a protein, and the binding sites of an allosteric protein typically consist of stable segments in proximity to relatively unstable segments, and the relatively unstable segment is capable of frequent changes in conformation or disorganized motion. So when a ligand binds to the protein, the moving parts of the protein's binding site may be stabilized in a particular conformation that affect the conformation of adjacent polypeptide subunits. So these things you can understand by this figure, which represents a hypothetical dimeric protein. And these hypothetical dimeric proteins have regions of high, medium and low stability. The regions of high stability are shown by blue color. Regions of medium stability are shown by green color, whereas regions of low stability are shown by red color, as you can see here, whereas pink segments are flexible, and the ligand binding sites are composed of both high and low stability segments. So when there is no ligand, the green segments are stable in the low affinity state, and pink segments are flexible. But when ligand bond to one subunit of the protein, and the binding of ligand stabilizes a high affinity conformation of the flexible segment, which is shown in the green color, and the rest of the polypeptide takes up a high affinity conformation. As you can see here, the high affinity conformation are represented in blue color, and this conformation is stabilized in other subunit through protein-protein interaction. Now the binding of second ligand molecule to second subunit takes place. So the binding of second ligand molecule to the second subunit of protein occurs with higher affinity than the binding of the first ligand molecule. As the binding of first ligand increases, the affinity of binding of second ligand. This is a kind of positive cooperativity, and the cooperative ligand binding can be described quantitatively. So now coming to a quantitative description of protein ligand interactions for protein that shows cooperative ligand binding pattern. As the binding of hemoglobin with oxygen is a cooperative binding, and the cooperative binding of oxygen by hemoglobin was first analyzed by Archibald Hill. Suppose a protein is having n binding sites for ligand. So in general, the reversible binding of a protein to a ligand is described by simple equilibrium expression, as you can see here. And the equilibrium equation becomes this: protein plus n binding sites for ligands, equilibrium arrow, protein ligand complex. So here the equilibrium arrow shows the reaction goes reversibly between the starting materials and the products. So for this equilibrium equation, we can now find the association constant and binding equilibrium. I have already discussed the association constant and binding equilibrium in my previous video where I discussed myoglobin. Association constant describes the equilibrium between the complex and the unbound components of the complex, and association constant is represented by Ka, whereas binding equilibrium denotes the fraction of ligand binding sites on the protein that are occupied by ligand, and the binding equilibrium is denoted by theta, and the expression for association constant, that is Ka, equal to concentration of product divided by concentration of reactant, that is concentration of PLN divided by concentration of P into concentration of L to the power n. Whereas binding equilibrium or theta is equal to concentration of L to the power n divided by concentration of L to the power n plus Kd. So on simplifying this equation, the equation becomes this, that is theta divided by 1 minus theta equal to concentration of L to the power n divided by Kd. So on taking log on both sides of the equation is log theta divided by 1 minus theta equal to n log concentration of L minus log Kd, where Kd is the concentration of ligand at which half of the available ligand binding sites are occupied. Means Kd is equal to concentration of L to the power n at 0.5. And this equation is known as Hill equation. And the plot of log theta divided by 1 minus theta versus log concentration of L is known as Hill plot. On the basis of this equation, the slope of Hill plot should be n, but the experimentally determined slope actually reflects the degree of interactions between protein and ligand, not the number of binding sites. Therefore, the slope of Hill plot is denoted by NH, which is Hill coefficient, and it measures the degree of cooperativity. And the value of NH is either equal to 1, greater than 1 or less than 1. If NH is equal to 1, the ligand binding is not cooperative, and this case is observed in single subunit protein. Moreover, it is also observed in a multi-subunit protein if the subunits of multi-subunit protein do not communicate with each other. If NH is greater than 1, it indicates positive cooperativity in ligand binding. Means binding of one molecule of ligand facilitates the binding of others. And this situation is observed in hemoglobin, in which the binding of one molecule of oxygen facilitates the binding of the remaining molecule of oxygen. Whereas if NH is less than 1, it indicates there is negative cooperativity in ligand binding. Means the binding of one molecule of ligand impedes the binding of others, and the well-documented cases of negative cooperativity are rare. And this is the Hill equation to the binding of ligand to protein. So to adopt the Hill equation to the binding of oxygen to hemoglobin, we can substitute the concentration of ligand by PO2 and Kd by P50 to the power n. So after substituting, the equation becomes this, which is log theta divided by 1 minus theta equal to n log PO2 minus n log P50 to the power n. And this is the Hill equation to the binding of oxygen to myoglobin and hemoglobin. And this is the corresponding Hill plots for the binding of oxygen to myoglobin and hemoglobin. From this Hill plot, we can see that for myoglobin, with the increase in oxygen concentration, there is no change in the slope. As you can see here, for myoglobin, straight line is observed, which indicates that there is no evident cooperativity in myoglobin. Whereas in hemoglobin, with the increase of oxygen concentration, the slope changes. As you can see here, this slope represents the hemoglobin with low affinity state, whereas this slope represents hemoglobin with high affinity state. And the maximum degree of cooperativity in case of hemoglobin is 3, which is less than the number of binding sites for oxygen, and it is normal for all proteins that exhibit allosteric binding behavior. So now the question is, what mechanism explains the cooperative binding of ligand to protein. And there are two models that suggest the mechanisms for cooperative ligand binding. First one is the MWC model, which is also known as concerted model, and another one is the sequential model. The MWC model or concerted model was proposed by Jacques Monod, Jeffries Beeman and Jean-Pierre Changuix. According to this model, all subunits of a protein are postulated to be in the same conformation. Either all are in low affinity conformation or all are in high affinity conformation, and these two conformations are in equilibrium. Here the circle represents the low affinity conformation or inactive conformation of a protein, which is more stable in the absence of ligand, whereas the square represents the high affinity conformation or active conformation of a protein. And the ligand can bind to either conformation but with different affinities. And the successive binding of a ligand molecules to low affinity conformations of a protein makes a transition to the high affinity conformation of a protein. Whereas the sequential model was proposed by Daniel Koshland, and according to this model, each individual subunits of a protein are in either conformation, whether it is in low affinity conformation or high affinity conformation. And the ligand binding to an individual subunit induces a change in the conformation of that subunit of a protein. And a conformational change in one subunit makes a similar change in the adjacent subunit, which also affects the binding of the second ligand molecule. So according to the sequential model, each individual subunits of a protein can be either in low affinity conformation or high affinity conformation, and the ligand binding to an individual subunit induces a change in the conformation of that subunit, which also affects the similar change in the adjacent subunits. Therefore, more potential intermediates are possible in sequential model as compared to MWC model, as you can see here. And these two models are not mutually exclusive, but the concerted model is viewed as all or non-limiting case of the sequential model. So till here we have seen that hemoglobin carry nearly all the oxygen required by cells from lungs to the tissues. But apart from oxygen, hemoglobin also carries two end products of cellular respiration from tissues to lungs and kidney, where they are excreted. And the two end products of cellular respiration that hemoglobin carry from tissues to the lungs and kidney are H+ and CO2. And the CO2 is produced by oxidation of organic fuels in mitochondria. And this CO2 is not very soluble in aqueous solutions. Therefore, bubbles of CO2 would form in the tissues and blood. So to prevent the bubble formation in tissues and blood, CO2 is converted into bicarbonate. And CO2 is converted to bicarbonate ion by a reversible reaction catalyzed by an enzyme carbonic anhydrase, which is particularly abundant in erythrocytes. Carbonic anhydrase basically catalyzes the hydration of CO2, as you can see here. When CO2 reacts with water, it results in the formation of H+ and bicarbonate ion. Means hydration of CO2 results in an increase in hydrogen ion concentration in the tissue, and increase in hydrogen ion concentration in the tissue results in decrease in pH in the tissue. Means whenever hydrogen concentration is increases in the tissue, there is decrease in pH in the tissues. So in conclusion, when there is increase in the CO2 concentration in the tissues, there is decrease in the pH in the tissues. And binding of oxygen by hemoglobin is profoundly influenced by pH and CO2. And the binding of H+ and CO2 is inversely related to the binding of oxygen. As pH of blood in peripheral tissues is 7.2, whereas the pH of blood in lungs is 7.6. So at relatively low pH and high CO2 concentration of peripheral tissues, the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen decreases as H+ and CO2 are bound. Therefore, oxygen is released to the tissues. Conversely, in the capillaries of the lungs, CO2 is excreted and blood pH consequently rises. Therefore, the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen increases As the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen increases, therefore hemoglobin binds more oxygen for transport to the peripheral tissue. So in conclusion, at low pH and high CO2, hemoglobin releases oxygen, whereas at high pH and low CO2, hemoglobin binds more CO2. So this figure represents the effect of pH on the binding of oxygen to hemoglobin. In this figure, the horizontal line represents the pressure of oxygen, whereas the vertical line represents the hemoglobin saturation. When pH decreases from normal value of 7.4 to 7.2, the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve shifts approximately 15% to the right. But when pH increases from normal value of 7.4 to 7.6, the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve shifts a similar amount, that is approximately 15% to the left. So in conclusion, when pH decreases from the normal value, the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve shifts to the right. That forces oxygen away from the hemoglobin and therefore delivering increased amounts of oxygen to the tissue, and this case is observed in peripheral tissue. But when pH increases from the normal value, the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curves shifts to the left, and therefore the quantity of oxygen that binds with the hemoglobin is considerably increased, and thus allowing greater oxygen transport to the tissues, and this case is observed in the alveolar tissues in the lungs. The binding equilibrium for hemoglobin and one molecule of oxygen can be designated by this reaction, that is Hb plus O2 HbO2 in a reversible reaction. But this reaction for binding equilibrium is not a complete statement, as the binding of oxygen by hemoglobin is profoundly influenced by hydrogen ion concentration. Thus, we should also consider the effect of H plus concentration on the binding equilibrium. So, after considering the effect of H plus concentration, the reaction for the binding equilibrium becomes this. Means HHB plus O2 leads to formation of HbO2 plus H plus in a reversible reaction. Here HHB plus represents the protonated form of hemoglobin. Therefore, hemoglobin binds both H plus and O2. But the binding of H plus and O2 with the hemoglobin is with inverse affinity. Means when oxygen concentration is high, hemoglobin binds with the oxygen and releases H plus. But when oxygen concentration is low, hemoglobin binds H plus and releases oxygen. So hemoglobin binds both oxygen and H plus, but the binding site for oxygen and H plus are different on the hemoglobin. Means oxygen and H plus are not bound at the same sites in the hemoglobin. Oxygen binds to the iron atom of the heme, whereas H plus binds to any of the several amino acids residue present in the hemoglobin. But the major contribution to the Bohr effect is made by his Hc3. So when this residue is protonated, it forms an ion pairs with Asp Fg1, and the formation of ion pairs stabilizes the deoxyhemoglobin in the T state that promotes release of oxygen from the hemoglobin. Therefore, as the concentration of H plus increases, protonation of any of the several amino acid residues in the hemoglobin where H plus binds promotes the release of oxygen by favoring a transition to the T state. Moreover, protonation of the amino terminal residues of the alpha subunits and perhaps other groups has a similar effect. So in conclusion, the four polypeptide chains of hemoglobin communicate with each other not only about oxygen binding to their heme group but also about proton binding to specific amino acid residues. So till here we have seen that hemoglobin binds both oxygen and H plus, but at different sites on the hemoglobin. Apart from oxygen and H plus, hemoglobin also binds CO2, but the binding of CO2 with hemoglobin is inversely related to the binding of oxygen. CO2 binds as a carbonate group to the alpha amino group at the amino terminal end of the globin chain of hemoglobin. So when CO2 binds to the hemoglobin, it leads to formation of carbaminohemoglobin, not carboxyhemoglobin. Carboxyhemoglobin is formed when hemoglobin binds to carbon monoxide. not carbon dioxide. And this reaction produces H+, and this H+ contributing to the Bohr effect. In the carbaminohemoglobin, the bond carbamate also forms an additional salt bridges. And this salt bridges helps to stabilize the T state and promotes the release of oxygen. So when the concentration of CO2 is high, some CO2 binds to hemoglobin. So when CO2 binds to hemoglobin, the affinity for oxygen decreases to the hemoglobin. That causes release of oxygen from the hemoglobin. But when CO2 concentration is low, as in lungs, where oxygen concentration is high, so the high concentration of oxygen promotes the binding of oxygen to the hemoglobin and release of CO2 from the hemoglobin. So in conclusion, it is the capacity to communicate ligand binding information from one polypeptide subunit to the other polypeptide subunit of hemoglobin makes hemoglobin molecule so beautifully adapted to integrating the transport of oxygen, carbon dioxide and H+ by erythrocytes. Now coming to regulation of oxygen binding to hemoglobin, and the oxygen binding to hemoglobin is regulated by 2,3-bisphosphoglycerate, that is BPG. The regulation of oxygen binding to hemoglobin by BPG is an example of heterotrophic allosteric modulation because modulator and normal ligand for hemoglobin are different. Here, modulator is BPG and normal ligand is oxygen for hemoglobin. BPG is present in relatively high concentration in erythrocytes. When hemoglobin is isolated, it contains substantial amounts of bond BPG, which can be very difficult to remove completely. BPG is known to greatly reduce the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen, and there is an inverse relationship between the binding of oxygen and binding of BPG. Oxygen and BPG binds at different sites on hemoglobin. Means BPG binds at a site distant from oxygen binding site, and BPG regulates the oxygen binding affinity of hemoglobin in relation to PO2 in the lungs. BPG plays an important role in the physiological adaptation to the lower PO2 at high altitudes. Suppose if a person is traveled from sea level to a mountainside and an altitude of 4500 meters where PO2 is considerably lower. At this high altitude, the delivery of oxygen to the tissue is reduced. But after just a few hours at this altitude, the BPG concentration in the blood increases. And the increase in BPG concentration in the blood leads to decrease in the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen. And this adjustment in the BPG level has only small effect on the binding of oxygen in the lungs, but it shows a considerable effect on the release of oxygen in the tissue. Thus, if a person is quickly transported from sea level to a mountainside and an altitude of 4500 meters, the BPG concentration in the blood increases, and the increase in BPG concentration in the blood resulted in the delivery of oxygen to the tissue is restored to nearly 40% of the maximum that can be transported by the blood. And this situation is reversed when a person returns to sea level from the mountainside. BPG concentration in normal human blood is approximately 5 millimolar at sea level and approximately 8 millimolar at high altitudes. And this figure represents the effect of BPG on binding of oxygen to hemoglobin. As you can see here, this curve represents the binding of oxygen to hemoglobin at sea level where BPG concentration is approximately 5 millimolar. And this curve represents the binding of oxygen to hemoglobin at high altitudes where BPG concentration is 8 millimolar. And hemoglobin binds to oxygen quite tightly when BPG is entirely absent. And the binding curve seems to be hyperbolic. As you can see here, this curve represents the binding of oxygen to hemoglobin when BPG is entirely absent. But in reality, the measured Hill coefficient for oxygen binding cooperativity decreases only slightly when BPG is removed from hemoglobin. So at the sea level, hemoglobin is nearly saturated with oxygen in the lungs, and the amount of oxygen released in the tissue is about 38% of the maximum that can be carried in the blood. But at high altitudes, at an altitude of 4500 meters, oxygen delivery declines by about 1/4, as you can see here. And the amount of oxygen released in the tissue is approximately 37% of the what can be carried in the blood. So in conclusion, the BPG concentration is adjusted when person is quickly transported from sea level to an higher altitude or from higher altitude to sea level, as BPG and oxygen binds at different sites on hemoglobin. The site of BPG binding to hemoglobin is the cavity between the beta subunits in the T state, and this cavity is lined by positively charged amino acid residues, and these positively charged amino acid residues interact with the negatively charged groups of BPG. As you can see here, BPG is highly negatively charged molecule, and one molecule of BPG is bound to each hemoglobin tetramer. But there are 4 molecules of oxygen that binds to each hemoglobin tetramer. The binding of BPG to the hemoglobin lowers the hemoglobin's affinity for oxygen by stabilizing the T state, and the transition from T state to R state narrows the cavity. As you can see here, this cavity is narrowed down when hemoglobin undergoes transition from T state to R state, and the narrowing down the cavity leads to the exclusion of BPG binding. So in the absence of BPG, hemoglobin is converted to R state more easily. BPG also plays an important role in regulation of oxygen binding to hemoglobin in fetal development, because a fetus must extract oxygen from its mother's blood. So to extract the oxygen from its mother's blood, fetal hemoglobin must have greater affinity than the maternal hemoglobin for oxygen. So to increase the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen, fetus synthesizes gamma subunit rather than beta subunit, and it forms alpha 2 gamma 2 hemoglobin tetramer. And this alpha 2 gamma 2 hemoglobin tetramer have much lower affinity for BPG than the normal adult hemoglobin, and this hemoglobin tetramer have much higher affinity for oxygen. BPG also plays an important role in the regulation of oxygen binding to hemoglobin in fetal development. So to extract oxygen from mother's blood, fetal hemoglobin must have greater affinity than the maternal hemoglobin for oxygen. So to increase the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen, fetus synthesizes gamma subunit rather than beta subunit, and it forms alpha 2 gamma 2 hemoglobin tetramer rather than alpha 2 beta 2 hemoglobin tetramer. And this alpha 2 gamma 2 hemoglobin tetramer have much lower affinity for BPG than the normal adult hemoglobin. And this hemoglobin tetramer also have higher affinity for oxygen as compared to normal adult hemoglobin. So due to the much lower affinity for BPG and much higher affinity for oxygen as compared to adult hemoglobin, fetus extract oxygen from mother's blood successfully. One of the molecular diseases associated with hemoglobin is sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia occurs in individuals who inherit the allele for sickle cell hemoglobin from both parents. The erythrocytes of the individuals suffering from sickle cell anemia are fewer and abnormal. The shape of erythrocyte is sickle-shaped erythrocytes, as you can see here. This is the normal erythrocytes and this is the sickle-shaped erythrocytes. The hemoglobin from normal erythrocytes are represented by hemoglobin A, whereas the hemoglobin from sickle-shaped erythrocytes are represented as hemoglobin S. So when hemoglobin from sickle cells is deoxygenated, it becomes insoluble and forms polymers that aggregate into tubular fibers. and the insoluble tubular fibers of deoxygenated hemoglobin causes deformed sickle shape of erythrocytes and this insoluble fiber of deoxygenated hemoglobin S cause the deformed sickle shape of the erythrocytes. Means the sickle shape of erythrocytes is due to the insoluble fibers of deoxygenated hemoglobin S, whereas the normal hemoglobin or hemoglobin A remains soluble on deoxygenation. And the altered properties of hemoglobin S result from single amino acid substitution. In normal hemoglobin, there is a glutamate at position 6 in both the beta chain of hemoglobin. But in hemoglobin S, the glutamate is substituted by valine in both the beta chains and the R group of valine has no electric charge whereas glutamate has negative charge at pH 7.4. Therefore, hemoglobin S has 2 negative charge lesser than hemoglobin A. So, the replacement of glutamate by valine creates a sticky hydrophobic contact point at position 6 of the beta chain, which is on the outer surface of the molecule. And these sticky spots causes deoxyhemoglobin S molecule to associate abnormally with each other and forming a long fibrous aggregate, which is characteristic of the sickle cell anemia. And another important point regarding this is substitution of glutamate by valine is due to single nucleotide mutation. When A is replaced by T, the glutamate is substituted by valine. So this is all about oxygen transport by hemoglobin. And in next video, I'll discuss about complementary interactions between proteins and ligands. And the best example of complementary interactions between proteins and ligands are immunoglobulins. And in next video, I'll discuss about the immune system and immunoglobulins.